Hello and welcome to this edition of the NCW Life Magazine. I'm your host, Jay Seebeck. Joined next to me is local author from Kashmir, Dan Gemeinhart. Sorry about that. And so we are going to be talking about a little bit about your new book, The Good Dog, which is going to be releasing on March 28th?
March 27th.
27th,
Yeah.
Okay. So people are going to be able to get that book. Let's talk a little bit about you before we get too far into The Good Dog. But you've been writing books now for 4 years, 5 years about?
Well, I've been published, like my first book came out in 2015, so I've been published for, I guess, 3 years, but it took quite a few years of working and trying before I got published. I've been writing for more than a decade, but only the past few years has it finally kind of started paying off.
Okay, so you've been working at this, and then you finally hit that breaking point, and then, you know.
Totally.
Tell me a little bit about that. And when you're an author and you're starting to get in the writing process, it's not like you just sit down and you write a novel and it's going to get published. You have to put in a lot of legwork to make that happen.
Yeah, so writing a book is kind of hard, and it took me a few tries. Like, this is my first book that got published, my debut novel, but before this book I wrote 5 other whole books that never went anywhere, never got published because they weren't good enough. But that's okay. Like, I learned a ton from writing those books, and I learned a ton from trying to get them published and sending them out and getting rejection after rejection after rejection. In fact, before I finally got a yes to get published, I got 99 rejections. It was on my 100th try that I finally got my yes. And those rejections weren't for any of these books, it was for those first 5 books. But yeah, I spent years and years writing bad books and learning the craft and getting rejections and kind of paying my dues until I finally got to where I wanted to get.
No, that's awesome. And so before you started writing, though, you were a teacher librarian kind of deal. So
yes.
Tell me a little bit about that as an experience that then got you into writing.
You know, it was awesome. So I was a teacher librarian at Mission View Elementary here in Wenatchee. Awesome school, amazing place, awesome kids. And I was there for 13 years. And when I wrote actually at least these first 3 books, I was still a teacher there, and it was awesome. It really helped me grow as a writer because I was working with kids and kids' books and seeing what they liked, what they didn't like, what hooked them, what didn't hook them, and reading all the awesome kid books, so I really got a feel for the market, and that's what got me into writing kid books. Like that first book that I wrote that never got published was a grown-up book, and it was awful. And then I started reading these middle grade books for like 4th to 8th graders, and I was amazed at how awesome they were and how diverse they were and how they took on really serious issues in a really profound, awesome way. And so then that got me into writing these kinds of books. And so that job was a fantastic job, just in general, but also as kind of preparation for becoming a kid-led author.
And so connecting, what your content of some of these stories are, they're very local. From Washington State, there's the one on The Honest Truth is Mount Rainier, and then the which one is this? The one in Wenatchee.
Some Kind of Courage.
Some Kind of Courage. Okay, yes, yeah. So that one's a kind of a pioneer story. I feel like that one's probably going to be one I'm going to want to try to read just because I'm a big history kind of nerd on it. So it'd be kind of good to get that Wenatchee connection for it.
Yeah. So yeah, Honest Truth, the kid starts in Wenatchee and he runs away to try to climb Mount Rainier. And Some Kind of Courage, it is 1890, but it's all around here. He starts in Kashmir, which was called Mission at the time, goes through Wenatchee, then over the Kalakam to Ellensburg, and then down to Yakima. So that one happens all around here. Yeah.
How do you go about when you're writing a story and then you want to use local geography? Do you go to these places when you're writing it and kind of just look around, maybe go on like a little hike or anything like that, just to kind of see what the environment's like, so when you're writing about it, you can then describe it pretty well to the readers?
Yeah, so I've been all the places in Honest Truth, and most of the places in Some Kind of Courage. I didn't actually go up and over the Kalakam, but sure. And so I did research as far as like books and the library and stuff to get information on the area, and then kind of like, I guess, field research to get a feel for what the area was like or is like and what the terrain looks like, what the character would have to do to go through there. Because you want, it's fiction, so you can kind of play with things a little bit, but you want it to be as realistic as you can make it.
Right. And so with The Good Dog coming out, you've been busy working on it. I remember contacting you back in, I think it was January. You're like, I got the deadline coming up, and after that, let me come on the show. So what's it like kind of working on a book and having a deadline like that? Is there a lot of pressure when you're coming up on a deadline? I'm sure you it's not your first, but you've got 4 now. So what's it like when you've gotten experience with it, but getting to that point and it's like, okay, I kind of crunch time or anything like that?
Yeah, it's stressful and it's not to my skill set. Like, I'm a great procrastinator. Nobody's better at doing nothing than me. And so, like, if a deadline is like months away, it's really easy to put that off with things that are getting done today. And so, yeah, so actually Good Dog, publishing is really slow. So everything takes 2 or 3 years. And so this one I wrote like 2 years ago, and it's just coming out. The one that I was behind deadline on is coming out next year. And so I was a few weeks late on the deadline for it, then a few weeks late on the editing deadline, but now I'm back up to speed. So yeah, I'm not good at that part of it yet. Self-management and self-supervision, I'm still kind of struggling with that.
Yeah. So for future books that you said you got one coming out next year, and then there's another one even after that supposed to come out. And so geographically, being here in Wenatchee, you plan to be able to do all of that writing still here? You're in Kashmir, but you don't have any plans of, sometimes writers, they'll move with where they're writing at. I don't know if there's anything like that for you.
We're definitely happy. My wife is a teacher in Kashmir, and our kids go to the schools there, obviously, and we ended up here by chance. Like, we're not from this area. We got jobs, and we came here, and we fell in love with the area, and I don't picture us ever leaving. Like, I think this is the best place to live and the perfect place for us. So I think we'll be in Kashmir for the long haul.
Okay, and so for viewers who are starting to get curious about The Good Dog, where are they going to be able to pick it up at when it releases on the 27th?
Well, I love local bookstores, and so A Book for All Seasons in Leavenworth is fantastic, and they will definitely have it, and I'll hopefully do some sort of signing event there. So they will always have it, and they've got all my books, they're great. But otherwise, any place you get a book, like Amazon will have it, and those kinds of places. My other books were carried by Costco when they came out. I don't know if that's going to be the same case with Good Dog. I don't know who makes those decisions, so it might be at Costco, but I'd root for A Book for All Seasons.
Okay, don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back on the NCW Life magazine. We're talking with local Kashmir author Dan Gemeinhart, so don't go anywhere.
Is your vehicle in need of a quick oil change or tune-up before hitting the road this summer? Stop by Quick Lube and Tune, the home of the good guys at 610 South Wenatchee Avenue.
Stay up to date with what's happening in North Central Washington. Go to the NCW Life community calendar at ncwlife.com.
Have a fun video you'd like to see featured on NCW Life? Email us at newsphotos@ncwlife.com.
Please join us weekly for the 12th District with yours truly, Kerry Condata. Check your channel guide for times or go to ncwlife.com for details.
Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.
For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.
Are you wanting high-speed internet but don't have access to PUD fiber? Try Sky-Fi high-speed wireless internet from LocalTel. Call 888-8888 today.
All right, welcome back to the NCW Life magazine. We are continuing talking with Dan Gemeinhart here, local Kashmir author for mid-grade book reading for kids' stories. The Good Dog comes out on March 27th, so definitely make sure that you're either looking on Amazon. You can go get it from the bookstore in Leavenworth. So we're going to talk a little bit more about The Good Dog. We hinted on it last segment, the story of Brody and how he has gone to heaven and he wants to come back to his boy here on earth. And so he finds some other spirit animals that help him find it, and it's a big story about companionship. So is there anything you can reveal about the story? Bigger plot. I mean, we talked a little bit about that last one. Is this one a local setting, or is this just kind of a generic, well, it's heaven, I guess?
Yeah,
so.
well, only in heaven, like the first couple chapters, then it's back here. And it could be local. So this one, the setting is unclear because since we're seeing it mostly from the dog's point of view, he doesn't know the names of the towns and things. Sure. So which is actually kind of a challenge writing it. Even like descriptions, like he couldn't say 20 feet ahead because the dog wouldn't know what 20 feet is. Would a dog even know what 20 is? And so the descriptions were kind of tricky. But so yeah, it could happen here. It doesn't not happen here. It's just not a named place.
Okay. So when readers start chapter 1 and then they get to the end at the end of the book, is there any underlying message or anything that you hope as a reader that they might, when they close the book for the last time, they're like, is there anything that you would like for people to get out of it? Any kind of overall message or?
Yeah, really, I don't have a theme in my mind ahead of time. I come up with a story, a plot occurs to my head or a character, and as I start to brainstorm the story and then write the story, like those kinds of themes and messages and truths kind of come out. And so I don't like engineer it in ahead of time. But most of my books, I think, are more about raising questions than trying to like impart a message. And some books are great that have a clear message or something they're trying to say or share. And mine are more about looking at those issues and those questions, because like middle graders, so let's say you're 9 to 14, that's when you really start figuring out the kind of person you're going to become. Like up until that point, you've just kind of been your parents' kid. And then in those adolescent years, when you start developing your identity and you try to figure out who you are and who you're not, and you've got all these pressures and all these questions of who am I going to be, how am I going to treat people? You've got peer pressure and social pressure. And so I try to go into those questions, like how hard is it to do the right thing, and what is the right thing to do? And a lot of these books, the characters don't wrestle with, can I do the right thing, but it's what is the right thing? Like they're willing to do the right thing, but sometimes in life it's not a matter of, here's the right thing, I guess I have to have the courage to do it, but what should I do? What is the path forward? And so it really just kind of wrestles with those questions. The characters try to figure out the best thing for them to do, and there's questions of how much can we help the world and change the world? The world can be a dark place sometimes, and sometimes it's easy to get kind of hopeless and to think that what you're doing isn't going to make a difference. And so you have to kind of believe in yourself and look inside your heart and try to do the best you can to be the best you can in the world. And so it's more about those kinds of questions and really having one kind of pat theme or message.
And it's kind of interesting, a lot of those things that they make me think of some of the reviews that you've gotten, is that your books are very, like they're designed for mid-grade kids, so it's like from, what is that, about 8 through about 13, roughly?
Give or take.
Right in there. And so one of the things I read in some reviews of your work is that people really appreciate how you don't sugarcoat a lot of things in your writing. Mm-hmm. And some people do for that age group, but
right.
You're trying to show people real life experiences in these young kids, and which is obviously why you've found so much success probably in your writing. So what's kind of that like, trying to get yourself, putting your writing and getting it to the younger people, but not taking it easy on the story,
right,
kind of thing.
And that is the trickiest balance in writing middle grade books, because those readers are awesome, they're sophisticated, and they know a lot about the world, and so they know about those kinds of issues which we as adults sometimes are really careful about bringing up or talking about with them. But they know about them, they wonder about them, and they want to think about them. Like even like Honest Truth, how it deals with death and mortality. And some people might say, oh, that's too heavy for an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old. But 11 or 12-year-olds, they know about death. They've usually had people in their family or their life die, grandparents, whatever, aunts or uncles, maybe even a friend, depending on what their life has been like. So they are ready to start thinking about those issues. And so I'm ready to start bringing them up. But at the same time, you have to know your audience, and you want it to be interesting and thought-provoking and emotional, but not traumatic or inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And so it is trying to thread that needle in every way, even like language. Like you want your characters to speak realistically, but we know that realistically, some characters, especially bad characters, might say words that we don't put in kids' books. And so you're always trying to thread that needle between making it realistic and interesting and compelling, but also appropriate for the audience. And so it is tricky. But as far as those issues, they are ready to think about those issues, talk about those issues, work with those issues in their mind. And so with my books, I try to raise those issues in a way that they can kind of think about them and process them and try to make up kind of their own minds.
And so you've got 3 daughters of your own at home.
Uh-huh.
So are they kind of almost your biggest audience fans? Because I'm sure they've read your work. Do you let them read them? I mean,
now that like my oldest daughter is a 6th grader, and so she has read all my books, and she's also, and my middle daughter's a 2nd grader, but she's a really great reader, sophisticated. She's not read these, but she's listened to the audiobooks of the first 2.
Okay.
And when I finished the rough draft of Good Dog, I read it out loud to them. They were my first audience, which was great, both to hear it out loud and you hear sentences that aren't great or phrases or descriptions that aren't great, also to see what they like and don't like, what they get and are confused by. And the book that I have coming out next year, which is the one's already done, same thing. They were the first ones. I read it out loud to them. And so, they're involved in my process. And they're generally pretty excited. I wouldn't say they're impressed. I don't think kids are often impressed by their dads. You're just dad. But they're kind of excited about it. And they're excited when I get to like meet authors that they're big fans of, because I get to go to these festivals and conferences and meet these authors that have books that my daughters love. And so it's really fun for them to see a picture with me and some of their favorite authors.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about, being a parent, a husband, and an author. What's it like trying to balance life in those kind of different ways? Because you're getting your time's picked up pretty quickly as a parent and a husband, right? So finding time to be able to then work on your writing and having I'm guessing you probably need a little bit of a quiet space, which is kind of hard to find sometimes in that situation. How do you make that happen?
Well, it's a little easier now that I'm no longer teaching, although I really, really miss teaching, and I hope to be in teaching again someday. But at least now I've got time during the day. Like when I wrote these first 3 books, I was still a teacher, and so my writing time was like after work, after family time, I would write from like 10 o'clock at night until midnight. And so that was pretty tiring and not ideal. And now I do have time during the day. But it is balanced, and especially now with the books, out and doing pretty well, there's a lot of travel that goes with that to do school visits and those conferences and conventions and festivals, so I'm gone a lot, sometimes for weeks at a time. And so that can be really hard, and my wife is great, but that is the main tough part, is just being gone so much. But when I'm around, I'm around. And so I don't have to get up and go to work, and so I can get the girls ready in the morning, I make their lunches, I walk them to school. And so for most of the time, it's actually pretty great. And then I can have quiet writing time during the day. And so I'm still kind of working that out. There's a lot of more work that goes into it than I thought. Like being a writer and being an author are kind of 2 different jobs. And the author is a lot of traveling and blogging and emailing and setting up travel and that kind of stuff. And that's like almost a full-time job on top of the actual writing the books part. And so this is all still new to me. I mean, it's only 3 years, and so I'm still kind of figuring that out myself, but so far so good.
Excellent. And so real quickly, young viewers here that might be watching this at home, if they want to write a book, how would you tell them to start? And how maybe the story of don't get discouraged? Because you had in the first segment we talked a little bit about your experience, but how would you recommend getting started if you want to start writing?
I would say write something you're excited about. Write what is fun for you. If you love graphic novels, write a graphic novel. If you love fantasy or sci-fi, if you're excited about dinosaurs or robots, write stories about that. Because at least for now, it should just be about fun and playing with stories and playing with your ideas and being creative and using your brain like a muscle. That's what matters the most. And I would say write as much as you can, because it's all good practice, whether it's a diary or school newspaper or books or stories or poems, whatever. It's all the same practice of having a thought or an idea and trying to put it into words that are clear and interesting. And so it's all good practice. And then just to read a lot, because that's a great way to educate yourself about stories and how stories work and what kind of stories you like and how characters work. And so writing a lot and reading a lot and then having fun with both of those things is the best work you can do at any age, but especially if you're younger, to get yourself ready to be an awesome storyteller in the future.
Awesome. Dan, we're out of time here, but real quickly, we've got The Good Dog coming out March 27th, so make sure that you folks at home looking for an exciting, fun book to read, whether it's just on your own or with your kids. Good Dog is going to be something you're going to look up. All Seasons Bookstore in Leavenworth is going to be...
Book for All Seasons, yeah.
Book for All Seasons in Leavenworth, we'll have it. I got Scar Island at home on Amazon, and I actually used, so little tip at home, if you did a lot of shopping over Christmas, you might have gotten some of those book credits. I used some of those in order to be able to pick that up, so get it for, and they're all pretty well priced. I mean, they're only about 10, 15 bucks, I think is what I saw.
And these 2 are in paperback now, so even cheaper.
Yeah, and all of them have a over 4-star rating on Amazon, which is excellent, and you've got some Amazon bestsellers, you've got New York Times editors best list. So I mean, those are some pretty big accomplishments. Again, Dan Gemeinhart, our local kids author from Kashmir. So his book comes out, The Good Dog, 27th. Make sure you pick it up. Thanks for watching this edition of the NCW Life magazine. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you all again real soon.
Is your vehicle in need of a quick oil change or tune-up before hitting the road this summer? Stop by Quick Lube and Tune, the home of the good guys at 610 South Wenatchee Avenue.
Stay up to date with what's happening in North Central Washington. Go to the NCW Life community calendar at ncwlife.com.
Have a fun video you'd like to see featured on NCW Life? Email us at newsphotos@ncwlife.com.
Please join us weekly for the 12th District with yours truly, Kerry Condata. Check your channel guide for times or go to ncwlife.com for details.
Get the fastest internet available in North Central Washington by switching to LocalTel and get speeds up to 1,000 meg. Call 888-8888 today or go online to localtel.net.
For all the latest news in North Central Washington, go to ncwlife.com or find us on Facebook. Got a news tip? Email us at news@ncwlife.com or call 888-2020.
Are you wanting high-speed internet but don't have access to PUD fiber? Try Sky-Fi high-speed wireless internet from LocalTel. Call 888-8888 today.
We're going to be talking a little bit about The Good Dog, but first let's talk a little bit more about your other publishments. We're going to start with The Honest Truth. Story, it's your first book that got published.
Right.
Story of a boy named Mark who's 12 years old and his dog Bo, and he wants to climb Mount Rainier after Mark is diagnosed with terminal cancer, which is kind of a morbid kind of thought of, as a 12-year-old.
Heavy, yeah.
But it's a local setting at Mount Rainier. So tell me a little bit about this book. It's your first publishment, so I'm guessing it's pretty close to your heart.
Totally. Yeah, and it's not terminal cancer. We don't know. At the end, it's unclear. So there's definitely hope. It's a story of a kid who runs away from Wenatchee to try to climb Mount Rainier because he had thought that his cancer was gone, and he finds out that it's come back. And before he goes back into the hospital for more treatments, he wants to fulfill this dream. And I wrote this book in honor of a friend of mine. He was my sister's fiance, so he was going to marry my sister. And like the main character, his name was Mark, and he loved mountain climbing. He lived in Ellensburg, and he climbed mountains all over the world, including Rainier, like 15 times. Wow. And then, unfortunately, just like the character in the book, he got cancer and ended up passing away from the cancer. And I was feeling really sad about that, of course, and so I wanted to do something in my friend's honor, in his memory. And that's where this book came from. Now, it's not about him. He was a grown-up. This is about a 12-year-old, so it's all fiction. But I still kind of took those pieces and tried to write it as a tribute to my friend.
Okay. And so, a very personal connection there. So is there any challenges when you're writing about that kind of thing? Like when you have that personal connection to the storyline, obviously, like you said, it's not necessarily the direct story, but it's a similar. What's kind of it like when you're writing about something closely to you like that?
Well, it was kind of a hard book to write. It helped that it was fictional, and so if I was like writing like a literal like memoir, then that would have been probably more difficult in some ways. And so I was able to have a little distance just because I was crafting a story and making it up. But sure, I'm definitely a sap. Like I cry in movies, I cry when I read books, and sometimes I cry when I write books during sad scenes. I think if you want the reader to feel the emotions of the scene, that at least for me, that I need to feel the emotions of the scene. And so there were parts of the book that were definitely very hard to write.
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. You can't expect your reader to have that same emotion if you can't even feel it when you're putting it together. And
Totally.
I can totally see that. So some kind of courage. Wenatchee Frontier story takes you back to 1890. Joseph Johnson.
Yeah.
Sorry. He prepares to leave this man that has taken him in after his father died, and then there's some other things that go on there, and it's kind of the pioneer story. What can you tell me a little bit about that? And
right, and so Joseph is a pioneer kid, and from what I can tell and from the research that I did, 1890 was still kind of a rough and tumble time here in Wenatchee. We were one of the last areas in the state settled, and so it was still kind of like the pioneer days. And so the main character, Joseph, is a pioneer kid. He's also an orphan. The rest of his family died on the journey west. And all that he has left of himself and his family is his horse, Sarah. And she's been his horse since the day he was born. He loves her more than anything. And at the beginning, he's living with this mean old guy who's supposed to be taking care of him. And Joseph comes back to their cabin and finds out that while he was gone, that guy sold Sarah to this cruel horse trader passing through. So Sarah's gone. And so Joseph runs away off on this adventure across the frontier to try to track that guy down and get his horse back. And so it's a Western, there's grizzlies and there's outlaws and stuff, but there's also lots of love, life, loss, family, emotional stuff in there.
And so for fans of the NCW Life magazine, recently we aired The People of Our Past down at the museum, which would have taken place about 20 years after this book was written. So a lot of good connection there. I'm sure our fans will be able to make some connections. Nice. I like that one as a history buff, kind of for me, that's where I like to read stories. So anything about writing historical fiction like that? What was kind of like the research going into that book for you?
It was, since the story is fictional, that made it a little easier, because some historical fiction is more historical, less fiction, and some is the other way around. This is more fiction, less historical, because all of the people, all the events are made up. And so all I had to get right, or as right as I could, was the setting. Like if you set a story on the Titanic, you have specific events and real people and a real timeline that you have to hit and make right. Where me, I just had kind of the background to get right. And so I did as much research as I could, local museums and the books that I could find at the library, just to kind of get that tableau as accurate as I could. And I hope I got it as accurate as I could.
Awesome. And then lastly, Scar Island. I've got the my girlfriend and the kid at home are reading this one. They're enjoying it. This one is, I mean, it's not. When you read your review on Amazon, a lot of them say it's very realism for, you know, they're not kids books. It's in between. You know, it's the like 8 to 14 kind of range.
Yeah, so the market term is middle grade. So like 4th to 8th grade, not YA, not those teen books, but not like Magic Treehouse, but in between.
Yeah, and so this one is definitely like more on the scarier side, so to speak. I mean, it's a very kind of haunting story a little bit. You know, there's a tragic accident a little bit. Tell me a little bit about Scar Island and the story of Jonathan Grisby.
Right, so this is definitely probably my darkest, grippiest, plottiest one. And yeah, it's still nothing like inappropriate. It's still a book for those age readers, but it's definitely the darkest one. So it's about a kid who commits a terrible crime. And as a result, he gets sent to the Slabhenge Reformatory School for Troubled Boys, which is this half prison, half reform school on an island surrounded by the ocean, and there's rats, and it's awful, and the grown-ups are terrible. And then catastrophe strikes, and the boys of Slabhenge find themselves alone on the island. No more grown-ups. And so they have to survive the island, they have to survive each other. The main character, Jonathan, he's dealing with his grief and guilt over what he did to get sent there. So it's a little bit about him dealing with his stuff, but it's a lot about adventure and survival and friendship. It's kind of like Lord of the Flies, but middle grade, and
that's what they told me. They're like, it's kind of a Lord of the Flies kind of vibe to it.
Right,
so.
and it's like I even have a character say that this is like Lord of the Flies.
Oh, really?
It's a clear parallel for sure.
That's awesome. And so then, what can you tell us without getting into any trouble with your publisher about Good Dog, which is coming out on March 27th? I haven't been able to see much as far as what the storyline's like, so I'm kind of curious as to how is this one kind of looking.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about Good Dog coming out. It is about a dog named Brody, who's a good dog, obviously, and he's also a dead dog. But it's not as sad as it sounds, because he's already dead when it starts. It's not one of those books where the dog dies at the end and it ruins your weekend. He's already dead. He's like in heaven, and it's great. So it's a happy beginning. But then he starts to remember the life that he lived. He starts to remember the boy that he loved. And he realizes that when he died, his boy was in danger, and he's not okay with that. And so he figures out how he can come back, like as a ghost basically, to try to save his boy. And so it's the adventure of this ghost dog coming back to Earth to try to find his boy and save his boy.
And he meets a couple of other friendly spirits along the way, too.
He's got some friends along the way. Yep, you always got to have those friends.
That's fun. And so where, you said there's a bookstore in Leavenworth that people are going to be able to pick up.
A book for all seasons.
A book for all seasons in Leavenworth will be having both The Good Dog and your other publishments will be there. So March 27th, make sure you head up to Leavenworth and pick up The Good Dog. We're going to be right back on the NCW Life magazine, so don't go anywhere. Talking with Dan Gemeinhart about his publishments and the publishment of Good Dog coming up and its release on the 27th. So don't change the channel.